and there was much grass. Please be seated. It's such an odd line. And there was much grass. All this grass all around. And on the one hand, it's a good thing there was a lot of grass because there was a lot of people and it took a lot of space for them to sit. But if you're a good Jew, and this is probably true for many of us, when you hear a reference to a lot of grass, a lot of green spread out before you, you probably hear a psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Often when this passage is read, it's actually paired with that psalm, which, interestingly enough, we heard last week. It's an image of rest. It's an image of rest in the midst of the glorious abundance of creation, which is exactly what God did after creating the world. Right? Day one, God creates. At the end of the day, looks and said, it's good. And then God adds something the next day. Looks, it's good. 6 days of this. Sun and moon, stars, darkness, light, animals of every kind, sea creatures, winged birds, human beings. And every day at the end, God says it is good. And then on the 7th day, God rests. That seems sort of logical to us, right? It's a lot of work creating an entire universe. Except that's not why God rests. God doesn't rest because creating all that we know and all that is took a lot of energy and effort on the part of the creator of all that we know and all that is. God doesn't really get tired because God's participation, God's work in all of the universe doesn't end. I'm not a deist. I don't think creation is a clock that God set in motion. As Christians, we're committed to a view of God continuing to be engaged in creation in ways that we are barely coming to understand. God didn't need a break. God's God. What God does on that last day is God enjoys. God sits in a verdant green pasture and looks at the abundance of creation and the ways in which it works together for the flourishing of everything in it. And God says, it is very good. God looks at the abundant beauty and glory of creation and celebrates by taking time to actually enjoy it. Sitting, looking, observing, maybe laughing. There's some pretty funny things in creation. God rests by enjoying a world in which everything participates together to flourish. Through life and death, everything cares for and feeds one another. Feeding is so central that it becomes the image for gathering a people and helping identify who they are. Also, if you are a good Jew and hearing this story, not only do you perhaps remember the psalm, perhaps remember that God sits and rests, you remember that God provides bread. That God provides bread to God's people in the desert. Enough for each day. Each day is sufficient unto itself. God provides the bread necessary except for the sixth day, when God provides enough bread that is gathered up in baskets. Did you hear that? 12 baskets. Gathered up in baskets, enough for the next day. Why? So everybody can rest. So they can be reminded that they live on the reliance of God and that God calls us to enjoy the creation around us. That God calls us to take a break, to laugh, to sit, to converse with our friends and our families, to look at what is around us in the confidence of knowing that it will be there the next day. That there is enough. There is enough. Friends, if you believed that, if you really believed that there is enough, how might that change you? Think of all the moments that you're just not sure that there's enough. There are people in this congregation who grew up without enough food. There are people in this congregation who have lost jobs at key times and been unable to pay their mortgage or pay their rent. There are times when we truly have not had enough. There are people in this congregation who have lost friends and loved ones, and they don't understand why. When you sit in that feeling of not enough, what does it do to your gut? What stirs in that place right there? This is where I feel my anxiety. And out of that, what do you do to make sure you never feel that way? How do you treat people differently because you're anxious about a conversation? How do you think about your money differently because you are anxious about whether you will have enough for when you retire? Or if you are in retirement, how do you feel about the possibility of some medically significant accident happening to you? And how does that change how you interact with the people around you? Maybe you save more money than you probably need because we live in a culture that says you're probably going to need an awful lot. Maybe, I love this talk of self-care. That was slightly sarcastic sounding there, if you didn't catch it. Because self-care suddenly looks like having 3 extra houses. And we spend so much time worrying about self-care, we get anxious about self-care. How does it change the conversation with a person that you need to ask a favor of, and you think they might say no? How does that change how you approach that conversation? Does your tone of voice raise a little bit in pitch as anxiety tightens your voice because you're afraid that they will not give you something that you need? Do you just avoid the conversation at all? Do you assume that, well, they don't know me, they don't know what I need, they don't really like me? How does the fear of not enough change how you live in the world? How does it change how you live in community? I think that fear is one of the greatest drivers of sin. I don't think we sin. I don't think we act in destructive ways towards one another because we are evil or malicious. I think we do so because we are afraid. We are afraid of people around us. We are afraid of a world that does not seem to be out for our interests. We are afraid of somebody else. And so we create laws that limit other people. We engage in politics that create factions among us. Fear drives our sin, and sin can happen through legal means and illegal means. And underneath that fear, I think, is an anxiety that there simply isn't enough. Friends, we assume in the Gospel of John that when Jesus issues a sign, that it's a miracle that makes us believe, that it's the reason we believe. And you are supposed to read this story of feeding 5,000 people, and you're supposed to walk away believing that Jesus is the God who leads us beside still pastures, who brings us food in the desert, who sits and enjoys creation. I don't think that signs in John work that way, because I don't think we work that way. In order to come to be a people of faith, we are invited. This sign, this story, it is the beginning of faith. It's the beginning of a life of faith. It begins us asking a set of questions. Who is this person? What are they supposed to do? Jesus is a prophet. We should make him a king. There is not a single king in the history of Israel that did not prove to be a disaster. And yet we want powerful people in powerful positions to change the world for better. And what Jesus says is that's not how it happens. Let me invite you to something different. Let me lay a table before you, a table in front of my enemies, and let you eat enough, and invite you into a different kind of life where there is enough. We may need to redistribute enough. I don't think it just happens like magic from the sky. But if you knew that you had enough, how would you treat people differently? How would that conversation change? How would the anxiety that you engage with your loved one shift? Because you know that there is enough love between you. How would it change if you knew that the world around us has enough to share? We just need to figure out how to do it. Instead of preserving for some, would it open your arms a little bit more so that everybody has a chance to eat? How would it change your relationship with your community, with the city of Tacoma? There is enough resources to shelter people. We need to figure out how to get them out there. How would that change how we do laws that care for the people around us? How would it change your relationship with Christ Church? Our anxiety about money, friends, it is high. And yet we do have enough. We may need to distribute it differently. We may need to make some difficult decisions. We may need to try some new things and see what happens. But if this is a place where we believe that we have enough, how would it change how you engage, how you participate here, how you spend your time here? And how does the time that you spend here change how you spend the time in the world around us? Friends, the liturgy that we do, it is the place where we learn the habits of being a people of faith. We eat together. It is not an accident that we center what we do around a meal because God fundamentally feeds people. But the point of this meal is not what we do here on a Sunday. The point of this meal is that we take it out to those around us. That is why we invite Eucharistic visitors to come forward to take literally this food to those who are unable to be with us. And it is why the service ends with a call to go and love and serve the Lord in the world, because what we have taken in here, we are called to offer to the world around us, each of us in unique and different ways. This thing we do, this sitting down in what I hope is a green pasture for many of you, this time of singing and of silence, of standing and of kneeling, of praying for ourselves and for those around us, it is creating us into a people of faith. And faith in the Gospel of John is something you can touch, that you can see, that you can taste, that you can smell. Faith is not an assent to an intellectual belief. Faith is a practice. And it is a practice that we learn over and over and over again. And frankly, we relearn as our bodies change, as our communities change, as our situations change. Faith is something that we do that feeds one another and feeds the world that God has created. Friends, there is enough. There is enough. Amen.